All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 8 of the Controller Collective podcast. Today is the very special finale of season 0 of our podcast. Everyone, get excited. Woo!
Woo! Let's go!
Woo! Let's go!
Yeah.
Season finale.
Yeah.
I can't believe we've already done 8 of these episodes already.
Well, technically we've only done 7, but
well, you know.
Unless you count our live stream as like an episode.
It kind of was.
Half an episode.
Yeah. Was it shorter or longer than our episodes are typically? I don't remember.
It's longer than some, shorter than our actual Switch 2 episode. That was a long episode.
And our first. Or
No, I'm talking about the second Switch 2 video we did.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The one that was after the live stream.
Well.
Anyways, that's not the topic for today.
Introduce the topic.
Today we have a heavily debated topic that my two co-hosts are going to debate over. We're going to be talking about microtransactions in video games. Ooh, scary topic.
Ooh.
Fun topic.
Very controversial.
Very, very controversial.
Yeah. I mean, is controversial the right word? I feel like most people hate them.
Well, I guess, yeah. But, like,
I'd just
they still
say
do
hot
microtransactions.
Topic.
Yeah. Something can still be controversial. Most people hate it, I think.
Yeah. There just needs to be differing opinions on it. Which we have today.
Yes, very much so.
Please introduce the sides you'll be taking on this argument. Talon, go first.
Okay.
I am Talon, and I am in favor of microtransactions and a lot of what companies are doing right now, pricing-wise, in the games industry.
I'm Peyton, and I think Talon's crazy.
Oh, ad hominem. Wait. Is that the right one?
SMH. Yes, that is the right one.
I don't know, man.
Are you gonna bring up what are those called?
Fallacies.
Yeah, fallacies.
I'm gonna be on the lookout. Peyton, no name calling.
My bad.
We need an ad hominem counter for this episode.
Yeah, maybe I'll have one.
Fallacy counter. It's just me.
Yeah, these aren't going to be like completely logical arguments or anything, but we'll make it entertaining.
Yeah, that's for sure. So
I'm Jarek, if you didn't know. I might have said that already, but I will be moderating this debate, asking the two sides questions, kind of get their facts. So just a general kind of question. What was your first experience with microtransactions in a game? If I had to take a guess, I would assume it's a mobile game, but like, when did you really pick up on microtransactions?
I'll let Talon take this one first.
I'm trying to think, because I didn't purchase microtransactions for a very long time. I think the first time...
That's not really the question. The question's the first time you, like, saw them.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, I can tell a fun little story here, actually. And this is going to undercut my argument a lot, actually.
Oh, that sounds great. Let's do that.
Great, let's do it.
So I think I was in like 3rd grade or something, and me and my brother, who's in like 1st grade at the time, we have My Singing Monsters on our tablets. So my brother, at the time, he was in 1st grade, he didn't know that those microtransactions in-game were actual money, and he racked up quite the bill, let's just say.
I feel like that's like the classic story that everyone uses as an example.
Yeah.
And you have first-hand experience.
It's funny that you bring up My Singing Monsters, because that was actually the example I was going to bring up too, because I think, but I don't think that was actually my first one. Now that I'm thinking about it more, um, so like my family was never that well off, but my dad was the first smartphone we ever had in our family was issued to my dad by his company, that he was working for, and I remember. Oh man, I couldn't tell you what the name of the game was, but it was like you owned, it was either a bakery or a like candy shop, and I think there were microtransactions in that game as well. But the one that I remember the most was in around second grade, my first experience with my Singing Monsters, and seeing all the uh you know uh the methods they use to try and drive people towards using microtransactions and such.
I think for me, I'm trying to remember which game it was because I had a lot of games on my mom's iPad when I was a kid. So, oh, does this count as a microtransaction? Do you guys know Where's My Water? The Disney game?
Yes.
Yes. Oh wow, that just brought back memories.
There's like, because you can you can get the free version, but that's like only the first couple levels, right? So, but then you can pay to get
Hmm.
more and more levels. Are those considered microtransactions? I'm not 100% sure.
I don't think they are, but I feel like in a way, no, I don't think they are. Because Cut the Rope was the same way. If you guys remember Cut the Rope.
Yeah. So,
But the rope is now free on YouTube Playables.
oh, shout out to
Really?
YouTube Playables, everyone's favorite service.
Does
I
anyone
love those
use that?
games. I
You
use
actually?
them. Yes, I do.
They've got
What?
like Jetpack Joyride on there too.
They do.
Oh man, Jetpack Joyride. That I tell you that was the golden age of mobile games in my opinion.
Yeah, now we've just got Raid Shadow Legends or whatever.
Yeah, and Genshin.
Oh god. That's like I hate that game.
You hate
I do.
Genshin?
Talon had a big
Man.
Genshin phase at one point.
Yeah, that was
I'm still chill with
sophomore year.
Genshin.
Yeah, that's kind of off topic, but well, I guess not, because
Yeah.
there's a ton of microtransactions in Genshin.
Yeah, I was gonna say like kind of the gotcha whole like what's the word I'm looking for? The gotcha model is kind of entirely based on transactions itself.
You guys play any gotcha games?
Microtransactions. Yeah. Um I tend to avoid gotcha games. I don't think I actually play any gotcha games.
I have no problem with gacha games, but I don't think I've ever spent money on one. Genshin I did play for a bit. I don't know if there's any others that I've played.
I'm just looking through my Steam library. I don't think I have. I don't think on my Switch is any different.
I know on my phone I have a few gotcha games on there, but I like barely play games on my phone anymore. Like Fire Emblem Heroes, a lot of those Nintendo mobile games are gotcha games.
Hmm.
Pokemon Masters as
Yeah, I
well.
like have no games on my phone except Among Us.
You have Among Us on your phone.
I didn't until I went to a club meeting and they wanted to play Among Us, so I was like, all right, I'll re-download Among Us, I guess.
So Peyton, question for you.
Uh-huh.
Do you think microtransactions are inherently bad, or is there a way they can be implemented well into games?
That's actually a really good question. Sorry, did you guys hear that?
No, I didn't hear anything.
No.
Okay, never mind. What was I saying? That's a really good question. I feel like, uh, in some ways there are some ways to enact microtransactions, but I feel like in most of those ways, I would see them as just a transaction and not something inherently a part of the the gameplay. Um, like one example that I can think of is that in older mobile games when they did put in microtransactions, there was also an option often to watch an ad instead to get the same benefit as using the in-game currency. And in both ways, the person who owns the game or the company is making money either way through ad revenue or from a direct transaction with the player. But it is a little less um, intrusive to the gameplay that way, in a way. Uh, and also, I feel like microtransactions in general are just more welcome within a mobile game platform. But I feel like when spread to console and PC games, it becomes much more intrusive and more of a plague on the art form.
Talon, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I do want to agree with you. Rewarded video ads, they are incredible. They're a great way for developers to monetize their game while giving the player an option. However, I also do think there's a point where those can get out of hand, just with how many. I don't know if you've played some modern mobile games where it's like rewarded video ad pops up every 15 seconds. That's a little crazy.
Yeah, and
But
we can
yeah.
talk about how, I mean, it's the same way. It's a similar principle with these microtransactions because really, um, they're trying to pursue getting as much profit out of their product as possible after the initial. A lot of times in mobile games, it's free, so I won't say the initial purchase, but um, in a lot of ways, this has become an intrusive thing to the gameplay itself. Like I was talking about, where people are taking microtransactions and the ads that you were talking about to this extreme because they're really trying to milk their profit out of this game and seeing it less as the art form that video games is, in my opinion, and more as a product to be sold and then to customers, and then after selling to those customers, these faceless customers, being able to milk them for even more from their product that they have already sold them is seen as a really good thing in the business side of things. So even if it makes it way into gameplay and is very intrusive to the gameplay itself, because of the profit motivation, a lot of higher ups in companies aren't going to back down and just make it more and more intrusive to the gameplay, making the game inherently worse.
Talon, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you
Hit me.
do you think microtransactions are necessary for developers to stay profitable?
I think in the overwhelming majority of cases, yes. There are some outliers from this, like take games such as Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, Mobile Legends, Bang Bang. They don't need ads to stay. Wait, I might have done this backwards in my head. Hold up. Let me restart. My brain isn't braining.
Oh no.
Hold up. Can you repeat the question, please?
Do you think microtransactions are necessary for developers to stay profitable?
Yes, I do think that microtransactions are often necessary. When you consider the amount that the developers actually make from ads they put in games, it's usually like 1 or 2 cents per ad that gets shown. And then also, a lot of the times, one thing to consider is with the microtransactions, they're not necessarily targeting the majority of their audience with microtransactions. What they're really trying to appeal to is those whales who are willing to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on the microtransactions, and that generally makes up the majority of their profits for those kinds of games.
So that's more in a mobile sense, but what if like on a console game where let's say you're already paying money for a game, but then there are microtransactions in that game like there's a lot of examples like Call of Duty, does that do microtransactions? I think they do now.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
The only
I
game
don't
that's
know
coming to
if
mind is Peggle 2.
What the hell?
Peggle 2.
I remember like okay, maybe more so like in a live service kind of format. Like I'm just gonna say Concord, but obviously that failed. So is it necessary for
I
games like
Concord.
those to have microtransactions?
I think a good game
So,
example here actually could be, sorry to interrupt, but Dragon's Dogma 2, or not Dojima, Dogma, I believe,
I'm not familiar.
yeah,
which
I've
was
never
a
played it.
$75 game, and there's still a ton of microtransactions in the game, and inherently they made certain aspects of the gameplay itself to be frustrating, so it would drive players to making these microtransactions.
Oh, another example I just thought of is have you guys ever heard of Skull and Bones by Ubisoft?
The first
Heard of it.
quad A game.
Yeah, I love that Ubisoft said that because now you can just make fun of them for it. They said it's the first quadruple A video game and it sucked. But like basically
It was really bad.
it was a full price video
and I
game,
was excited for
but
it.
there's a ton of microtransactions everywhere. Is that necessary?
That is not necessary. Most of the time, when I will justify microtransactions, it is when a game, especially, is free to play or very low cost. When you get to the higher costs, I can see DLCs being justifiable, but if you're having like the same number of microtransactions as one of those mobile games that was thrown together in 3 days, and you're a AAA game that costs $60-$70,
Quadruple A.
I cannot yeah, I cannot justify that. You're kind of being a little over greedy there. And I think it just degrades the quality of the product overall when you add that many to a game that's already high priced as is.
So when you're saying free to play, a game that comes to mind is that's one of your favorite games is Overwatch 2, and that has a battle pass in it. Are battle passes better than these other type of microtransactions that you have in games?
So I think battle passes are great. They generally give the player a lot of rewards compared to individual microtransactions that they might do. Take for instance a Overwatch battle pass. It costs 1,000 in-game credits, which is about $10 give or take, but you can also gain those credits in game through the battle pass, the free version. You get 600 each season. It makes it in a way optional for the player to purchase. It does incentivize people who play a ton to purchase it each season, but you also get a ton of rewards compared to any single transaction.
And any thoughts on battle passes?
Um, I think Talon is actually pretty on point here when it comes to battle passes. I think a battle pass is definitely like a better route to take than a bunch of individual microtransactions or something like what a gacha would have, where they would put new skins into the game, but then it's just completely random whether or not you could roll for that. Instead, the battle pass kind of guarantees that you could get these skins. Um, it's just me personally, and I think there are quite a few gamers that feel the same way, is that they just feel battle passed out. Like there are so many games that are um, putting battle passes into their gameplay, and some of them don't really need those passes, or they just feel like it's being overdone in gaming. And that comes with anything that's a trend in any art form or media. So, but I don't think that inherently means that all battle passes are bad. I actually do agree with Talon that on the whole, it's better than a bunch of microtransactions, smaller microtransactions.
So, how do you feel about microtransactions that are cosmetic only? Are they harmless for the people who want to spend that money, or are they also predatory?
I think in a way they can be predatory. Now, there is context that is needed when talking about these sort of things, because if we're talking about a free game or an insanely cheap game, then it can make sense. And if they're a cool skin that somebody wants, why hold them back from that? But if we're talking about on a larger scale, on a AAA scale, because a lot of these AAA game studios see what these free to play, extremely popular free to play games are doing, and think to start trying to implement that into their own games. When it does depend on the context of what the gameplay is like. Like say there are skins in a solo player game that are locked behind microtransactions. To me, that's a pointless endeavor and blatant greed on the half of the studio, assuming that this is a solo, like a AAA or expensive game in general, and then you're locking these interesting things that could be won through just gameplay, timing gameplay, or maybe an achievement instead of putting them behind a paywall. But within the context of like a free game, I think there's not necessarily anything wrong with it or predatory, as long as the skin can just be achieved easily, not something like a gotcha formula where you have to roll a ton and spend a lot of money in order to guarantee getting that skin or character. I feel is much more predatory.
There an aspect of FOMO to this? Like you see a bunch of people using this new skin that just came out, but so you're like, oh, I really like that skin, but maybe I don't have enough money, but I really want to use it. Is there like that kind of aspect to it?
Yeah, I totally think, especially in these free to play games, that it is kind of playing on a FOMO, especially in their younger players, where, oh wow, this new skin that came out, like um, just something that comes to mind because of course it does, is the Miku skin that came out for Fortnite. Like everybody wanted that, and it actually drove a lot of players to play Fortnite just because they wanted that skin. And you could definitely argue that that was a fear of missing out because she's only going to be in the shop for so long, who knows when she'll be back, and it's such a cool skin, I want it, so I have to buy the battle pass or I have to buy the skin. But I think there's nothing inherently super wrong with that, given that Fortnite's a free game. But if you're preying on somebody's FOMO and you already made them pay 50 or plus dollars for the game, I think that is an inherently predatory and bad business practice.
So you actually just brought up something that I completely forgot about, and it's the fact that like games like Fortnite, they have a rotating shop where like things don't stay in the shop forever. And there are certain collaboration skins, I believe, in Fortnite that have only been in the shop once and have like never come back since.
hmm I think Peter Griffin is actually one of those, funnily enough.
Yeah, so like that could be another aspect to that
Yeah,
FOMO
and I
because
think
like you
that's
want to
a
get it
blatant
before
example
it like
of a
leaves the shop.
company. Yeah, that's like a blatant example of companies definitely using FOMO as a rotating shop.
Talon, any thoughts?
So I think monetizing cosmetic things is probably the most ethical and logical way to monetize games. First off, nothing affects gameplay when it's cosmetic, such as skins. It's a completely optional purchase. Normally, the player can only have one skin active at a time, not counting games like Valorant where there's a ton of different gun skins. However, in general, most games, Overwatch, Rocket League, most games, you can only have one skin active at a time. So I think whenever they're releasing new cosmetics, they're kind of creating a bar for themselves that they have to beat the previous skin to be able to create a purchase that happens. And I think it's a very good way to monetize games. No one's forcing you to purchase skins, and it's completely optional.
So, kind of sticking to the topic of skins, Talon, I have another question for you. In a game like Overwatch,
Yes.
they do collaboration skins every season. So there's been a lot, especially recently, there's been a lot of outcry from fans about favoritism in these skins. You see characters like Kiriko and Mercy and Soldier getting skins all the time. Is that an intentional tactic that they use to get that money from players?
Absolutely, it's intentional. Don't forget about Juno there as well. Juno's gotten, I think, 3 collaboration skins, and she's only been out for half a year. But it makes complete sense from a business perspective. More people are purchasing the skins for these characters. So even if it comes at the expense of other mains or other characters not getting as many skins for their characters, the truth is, the Mercy and Kiriko players are all going to purchase every single skin that comes out for those characters. And there are a lot of Mercy and Kiriko mains, so why would they not?
Would you purchase every Malga collaboration skin that comes out?
I have gotten one. I got the Jet Black one, which I don't even know what it was a collab with, but I thought the skin looked cool. But even I haven't purchased every Mauga skin that exists. I don't have the current battle pass, which they released a new Mauga skin with. I didn't have the original pass with a skin for him, and they released I forget what it was called, but it was like an ice Mauga theme. I didn't get that one.
Oh, I have that
I
skin.
just stick with. Yeah, see, I didn't feel like I needed it. It wasn't worth the value for me
Yeah, but
because I
didn't
already
buy
have
it.
2 skins that I like.
I got it from a loot box, I think.
Oh, that's crazy. Now I'm jealous.
Or maybe it came with Game Pass. One of the two. Anyway, that doesn't matter.
Sidetracked.
Do you guys think microtransactions are intentionally exploitative towards younger gamers? Like, think mobile games for this one.
Yeah, 100%. And it's predatory. It is 100% predatory on minors. And I think that's kind of the biggest moral qualm I have with some microtransactions. I'm not accusing every company ever who's had microtransactions of trying to be predatory towards these minor gamers, or gamers who are minors. But I think a lot of microtransactions kind of are predatory on this younger crowd. But yeah.
An example I think of that's like, okay, this is kind of weird is like Mario Kart Tour. I don't know if you guys have ever played it, but it is a mobile game.
Mhm.
I have not.
A lot of younger gamers, like kids, they like characters like Yoshi and all these cute characters, but they're not unlocked by default from the get-go in Mario Kart Tour. So are they incentivized to spend money to try and, oh, I really want Yoshi. I want to play as Yoshi. So that's kind of like what I
I
think
mean,
of, because like especially with these like brand recognizable characters like Mario, Luigi, Bowser that aren't unlocked from the start, and they're like higher rarity as well. That's a whole different thing.
uh so you can't inherently buy them. There's a rarity. It's a
Well,
gotcha.
kind of. It was a gotcha when the game first came out, but then like when it kind of died, they switched it so it's just you can buy specific characters, but there's a rotating shop. You can buy in-game currency
Gotcha.
to get characters and carts and stuff. So it was gotcha. It is not anymore. But Talon, I
Gotcha.
do want to hear your opinion on these younger gamers, especially with your story about your brother earlier.
Yeah. So I think that it's not as predatory towards kids as you're making it seem. The main demographic that almost universally game developers want to be targeting with their microtransactions are people who are gaining income. So people within the range of like 20 to 35, somewhere in there, these people have money to actually spend. When you think about kids, they don't necessarily have the money to spend unless they're getting money from their parents. And of course, things do happen sometimes where kids will unknowingly purchase hundreds of dollars of things in games without understanding the consequences. However, that's not the intended effect.
I also do want to put this out there. I did some research into this topic like a couple months ago for a paper I was writing. And this whole story about, kids like spending a ton of money to buy things from mobile games, it's not as common as like the media makes it out to be. It is very much like an exception, not the norm. But there should still be a safety net there, I think. So it can't happen at all, is my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I think when that happens, a company, if there is proof that it was a mistake by a kid, then I think a company should reimburse the person and then just, I mean, wipe the account maybe, or just roll it back to a few days before it happened. But that kind of stuff, it seems like there's a simple fix.
Well, I mean, first off, I think um you're how do I want to say this? I think um in many ways when something new or something that people don't like um is brought up, often people will bring up children because we have sort of as humanity an inherent sense of protection of the young and so often we can see that used distastefully by politicians or people who are acting in bad faith and but where am I going with this? uh my point is I think when you're saying that well, a business really needs to point its microtransactions and try and sell them to people who have income coming in. I think you're kind of giving businesses too much credit because I think there are businesses who know that there are kids with parents who will just let them buy things because they really want them so they'll be able to get that profit and I don't think they're necessarily caring where that profit comes from if that microtransaction is in the game it's a like what Jarek brought up, like Yoshi and these characters that kids would like. You know there are kids playing that game. It's a Nintendo based game and it's mobile, so it inherently appeals to a lot of kids. And we can see a business certainly could hide behind a mask saying well, we're just trying to appeal to people 20 and 30-year-olds, people who are having this profit come in, but it's also affecting these children, and it's also somewhat predatory in that fact. Now, we can argue how predatory it is if really the business is acting in good faith or not, but I think in many cases, a business is just trying to maximize most businesses, not all businesses, are trying to maximize their profits in any way possible, and they're not going to care if they have to take advantage of things such as uh, knowing that their fan base tilts young, so they're going to be more impulsive and they're going to make these decisions to have microtransactions and to annoy their parents to give them money for these transactions. And a parent can qualify this being, oh well, it's going to make my kid happy, and on the short term this one microtransaction doesn't seem like a lot of money. Um, and yeah, it can snowball, and the business isn't necessarily going to care where that money came from, whether or not it was predatory or not, as long as they're making their profits. I think a lot of businesses act in bad faith that way and don't care. They just care about their profits, which is why we see microtransactions being so much more of a problem in the art form now, because businesses are really starting to take over and want more and more profit out of their games.
Chad, it's starting. He's starting to get angry.
I'm not getting angry.
I know. I'm just.
Come on, we need to increase the ad hominem counter.
Yeah, it hasn't gone up at all.
Go crazy, Peyton.
I'm trying to act in good faith here. I'm trying to have a productive argument.
I think it's been productive so far.
Yeah. I've been
Yeah.
having a great time. So I want to go back to Talon here for a second. A game we played a lot together. I think it was like, it must have been like 3 years ago at this point, was Pokemon Unite.
Oh man.
Yes. That game.
How do you feel about the microtransactions in that game, Talon?
So I think for the most part, the pay to win got blown out of proportions in that game, because although there were items that you could upgrade and purchase the upgrades with real money, and it was hard to max them out, they really didn't give that much of an advantage past level 20. It was like, I want to say 1% more attack or something to get it from level 20 to 30. I do think in a competitive game, there shouldn't be pay to win for any part of the competitive experience. I think they've leaned more into the cosmetic side recently, though. But it definitely got blown out of proportions, especially when there was just a video made by Moist Critical about it, and then he... I still remember this video. He just got fed in the early game as Gengar, who was the strongest character in the game, and then used that as the reasoning for why the game was pay to win. It was somewhat pay to win because there are mechanics you can purchase to increase your power directly in the game, but it was fully blown out of proportions.
So this leads into another type of microtransaction that I just thought about, like specifically in the MOBA genre, which is a lot of the time in League of Legends, Smite, Pokemon Unite, the characters are locked behind a paywall.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, a new character will come out. They're pretty good in the meta. They're like top of the tier list or whatever, but you have to pay for them. So what do you think about that, Talon?
I think it's mostly fine. I don't know if I'm saying that just because it's become the norm or if I truly believe it, but I've never fully felt like I have been upset that a character is strong and they're locked behind in game currency. Because whenever a new character comes out, you can generally expect they're going to be like above the norm in power when they come out. So you can save up your currency for when they come out. Yeah.
Interesting. So Peyton,
Now,
oh,
personally,
go ahead.
I believe that that starts to infringe upon the funness of the game, at least in the short term. I mean, we all know in these live service games or MOBA games that eventually these new heroes or characters are going to be, you know, balanced better and not be the meta. But in the short term, for days, weeks, or maybe even months, um, people who refuse to pay the extra money in the game are having a less fun experience, which is bad for the player and the consumer of the media. Um, and I believe it starts to infringe upon the widely disliked and for good reason pay to win formula that some games have taken, which is inherently something that most people very much dislike, like what we saw in Tarkov. Everyone was upset about that, or at least everyone who played Tarkov and some drama YouTubers. And I it actually reminded me of one of the things that um, sort of um, put me off from playing Overwatch 2 was having heroes locked behind the hero pass or whatever it's called or the battle pass. Um, so unless you put a lot of hours into the game or had the battle pass, you wouldn't be able to play the new hero, which was a big downside for me. I don't know if that's still how Overwatch 2 is. I haven't played in a very long
It's not
time,
like
but
that now.
I think that's a good thing, inherently. At least that's my opinion on this specific version of um, transactions in video games.
How does Overwatch do that now? Because I remember, I don't know how it works for new players, but like if you had an Overwatch 1 account, every character is unlocked from the start and you get all the new characters now as well. But how does it work for a new player?
So for a new player, they have a portion of the roster unlocked at the very start. And then as they go through their required 50 quick play games or whatever it is, they will slowly unlock more and more characters. And it's kind of a way for the game to ease the player in and not bombard them with like 40 different character options right off the bat, with some of them being extremely difficult characters, but the player has no way to know that. And then just for any players in general now, the characters are not locked behind anything when they're released. The players can just start using them day of release.
Well, isn't there a better way to convey to players that this hero is difficult? Like, what comes to mind immediately is Marvel Rivals just has a difficulty ranking for its heroes. So you can click through all of them and be like, oh, this is 5 stars. This is probably a hero I shouldn't start playing since I'm new at the game. Instead of locking heroes behind a mandatory gameplay period.
I don't think it's problematic in Overwatch's case because they are casual games. They don't count for anything. And I think if you give a player just the option to pick whatever character they want out of the starting roster of Overwatch characters, there's a high chance that they're going to stumble upon a very high skill character and struggle a lot and then quit.
Well, yeah, but that's why I'm saying they could just put a difficulty meter on all the heroes to let that person know before they select the hero, like what you see in Marvel Rivals.
I do think you're somewhat overstating the accuracy of those difficulty ratings for Marvel Rivals
I
characters.
mean,
I don't
yeah,
have
it's somewhat
exact.
subjective,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying
And
that there's better ways to do it than limiting a player's options.
I don't
At
know.
least in
I
my
I
opinion.
feel like I prefer having them locked out because it at the very least forces players to play simpler characters before they move on to something like Tracer or Genji.
Hmm.
Because when you think about what characters are popular in Overwatch, those are a couple of the most popular, at least in the DPS role. And if new players just jump right into that, they're going to be so lost.
I'll just butt in here. I've played not like a lot of Overwatch, but a decent amount of Overwatch, and I still don't know how to play Tracer or Genji. So I think in regards to Marvel Rivals, this whole difficulty meter is like a double-edged sword. Cause like you've got a character like Spider-Man, and the way Spider-Man is designed in Marvel Rivals, he is a very technical character. You need to have good aim,
Hmm.
you need to know your combos and stuff like that. But having him unlocked from the start, you're a little this like 10-year-old, 11-year-old, whatever, they're gonna see, oh, my favorite superhero is Spider-Man. I want to play as Spider-Man. And they're just gonna not like either they'll have fun swinging around but not helping their team at all, or they'll have no fun because they just keep dying. So
Hmm.
that is a very double-edged sword, but like it works the same way for Overwatch. Like someone sees, oh, there's this hamster in a big mech. I want to play as that. And then they can't for 50 games or whatever.
Hmm.
That's just my
Yeah, just as an
opinion.
example of how scattered the Marvel Rivals difficulty ratings are, I'm going to name a couple characters. I want
Well,
you guys, this is a guessing game, on a scale from 1 to 5 stars, 1 being easiest and 5 being hardest. I want you guys to guess where the characters are on the ranking.
So you want
Does
me to
that sound
say,
like a fun
you want
game?
me to say the official, like what the devs think it is?
I want you to guess what it would be on a scale from 1 to 5 stars
Okay.
of difficulty.
I might just know
All
this,
right,
but we'll see.
let's start out with Hawkeye.
Hawkeye's 4 stars.
I don't know. That's probably right.
Jarek?
I mean, like, there's nothing all too technical about him, but he need to aim. I'm gonna say he's 3 stars.
So Hawkeye in game is listed as a 5-star character.
Yeah, okay, that makes
I thought he
sense.
was listed as 4. I was well,
He's probably got the website up, Peyton. There's no.
yeah,
I do.
I know. I'm just
All
saying.
right.
I thought. See, here's my whole
Let's.
thing about
Okay.
this performative argument you're making, Town, is that I was never denying um, that it's a flawed system. I was just giving an example of something they could do instead of locking behind characters. I think what Jarek was saying earlier is it was pretty spot on, where both forms are double-edged blades. I think it's just me personally, I have a preference towards the idea of a difficulty meter. Now, we can argue about the semantics of, well, Marvel Rivals isn't really implementing it that well, or it's subjective. Yeah, sure, but that's not really my point. My point isn't Marvel Rivals is doing it great. I'm saying this is an idea that was used in Marvel Rivals, but could be used in other hero-based shooters or in MOBAs or whatever, instead of locking characters behind something. I'm not saying that Marvel Rivals is doing it perfect. I'm just saying they have a good idea that could be refined upon.
Hold on, but this was a fun game. I
Yeah.
want to keep going with the game.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing against the game being fun. I'm just saying.
All right, let's go Invisible Woman.
Oh, shoot, man.
I don't know
I've
because
played a
I
lot
never
of
look at
that
the support
character.
people.
I think it's 2 stars. That could be wrong though. I'm gonna say 2 stars.
Peyton?
Uh, I think it's 2 stars too.
Invisible Woman is listed as a 4-star
Yes.
character.
Oh my god, she is. And it's so dumb because it's not right at all.
All right. I'll have this be the last one to not take up too much time in the episode. Star-Lord.
Oh, Star-Lord's a 2-star hero, isn't
You
he?
should know this one. You play a lot of Star-Lord.
Yeah, I played a lot of Star-Lord in the last season. I'm pretty sure he's 2-star.
I
That
think
is correct.
Oh,
He
okay.
is 2-star. Oh,
I didn't
sorry.
even
I
get to
thought you were
guess.
agreeing with him.
Well, I
Sorry,
mean,
what
he
were
would
you
know
gonna
more
say?
than I would. I was just gonna say, I feel like you would pick one on one of the extreme ends, like 1 or 5. So I was gonna say 1, but then that was just wrong.
I don't feel like there's that many like 1 or 5 heroes.
I know Punisher is 1, Spider-Man's 5.
Mhm.
They have Psylocke in 5, which I agree with. I think Widow should not be in 4. It should be a 5. There's no way Hawkeye should be at 5.
But like
He
Black
is
Widow
just
doesn't
an
have any
easier
other
version of
abilities.
Widow.
She's just got scope and shoot.
Yeah.
She has the batons mode.
I guess but it's just like a melee.
There's
Anyways,
no way Hulk should be in 4. He should be 5, hands down.
oh yeah, Hulk is like the hardest tank to play.
I don't know why
Really?
they have Magic
never
in
played him.
3. Magic should probably be at 4. Hela's in 3 for some reason.
Hela should be a
Knock
1-star
that down
character.
a couple tiers.
I guess because you have to aim. Like that's the same because they're reasoning for Hawkeye, but I don't know.
Okay, but they have Cloak and Dagger in the same tier where you don't have to aim.
Wait, what is Cloak and Dagger?
3-star.
What?
Yep.
The character
In the
aims-
same tier as Captain America as well.
God, I love playing Captain America. That's like one of my favorite hero shooter characters.
I
I'd
think we're
bump
going
Cap
off on
up
a
to
side
4
tangent
stars. So
here, you guys.
sorry.
Yeah, this all spawned from something that's off topic, anyways, because characters in Overwatch aren't locked behind microtransactions.
They're not locked behind microtransactions. You are forced to play the games.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
That's why I said it spawned from something off topic, anyways.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
I've got
assume you have more questions.
Yeah, I got a couple more.
Yeah.
Peyton, do microtransactions ruin your enjoyment of a game? Like if a game has microtransactions in it, is it inherently bad or like worse than it would have been if it didn't have microtransactions?
In some ways, for me, it does because it can jive with the tone of the gameplay or of the game in general. It can feel kind of more like a corporate store than it does necessarily an actual game or art form, which comes from them trying to incentivize you to spend money on their game and therefore um, make their profits go up. But I don't think that every game that has microtransactions is inherently a bad game. That is entirely like not my argument at all. But just for me personally, it can serve to dampen the tone or the feeling of a game. Can make it feel more corporate, like I had already stated. But I think in a lot of cases a lot of games that do have a lot of microtransactions that I think of this way are a lot of free to play games or really cheap games. So I can understand why they have these microtransactions in the game, and I'm not necessarily fully opposed to that idea because they're not necessarily making any profit off people just playing their game.
So let's say, for example, like just Genshin Impact. Would you be more open to trying the game if it wasn't a gacha game?
I think I would 100% be, because I don't think Genshin inherently, like I've tried to play Genshin before. It's just unfortunate I don't really have my laptop wasn't really able to handle it, obviously. Um uh like for me, as somebody who enjoys like Japanese and Asian aesthetics and anime, it is something that personally I think I would be way more willing to try if the gotcha elements weren't in the game at all, or just weren't super predatory.
So, as someone who has played Genshin before, I never like played into the gotcha elements, and I still found it to be an enjoyable experience. I
Mhm.
generally don't think that microtransactions degrade the quality of a game just by existing. I think there could be a better argument for that being the case in a game if it costs like $60, then it might be pushing it. But especially in free to play games, they make the large majority of their profits from microtransactions, and I think just the way that they push the microtransactions is more important for the player experience than their actual existence.
So, another question for Talon here. I think of Overwatch 2 and why they decided to go with Overwatch 2. Like, obviously, there's many reasons, like a new engine and like 5v5 and that whole thing. But do you think microtransactions and the transition to free to play were a part of that?
I think it's quite probable that that was one of the main reasons, was that they wanted to switch their monetization model. What they were originally on was a subscription model where, what was it, like $20 each year to play the game or something along those lines? I'm not fully
No,
sure.
you just paid $20 and you had Overwatch 1.
I thought it was a subscription.
I don't think so. I only played Overwatch 1 for like a year before Overwatch 2 came out, so maybe it was a subscription, but I'm not 100% sure.
Might be fully tripping. Oh, it was buy to play. Okay. Let me um refresh my argument here. So, especially when a game is a one-time purchase, you start to see a lot of like revenue come in at the start, and then over time it really dwindles in terms of money, especially since the game was so popular back in 2016. Every single player who played purchased the game then, and then they're getting very few players come like 2021 or so. So it made sense for them business wise to monetize cosmetics. That's how they can continue to make revenue off of the game. Now, they can't just do that in their pay to play game originally because they have loot boxes and other free systems for players to get these cosmetics. So then they pivot to the free Overwatch 2. I still believe that's the main reason for that transition.
I just want to say that like Overwatch 2 has actually come a long way in being a lot better of a game these days. Like obviously they've listened. Obviously there was the whole like getting rid of Jeff Kaplan and all those other people who worked at the old Blizzard.
Mhm.
But like now even I know the developers, I just heard about this the other day, but the developers of Overwatch have unionized now. So
Yeah. Uh, um, I
I
doubt
haven't
any
heard
of them
about
will
that.
ever hear this, but huge congratulations to all of you. It is the right of workers everywhere to be able to unionize. So,
yeah, if anyone who works at Blizzard listens to this podcast, good job. Good on you.
yeah.
And I mean, even with their monetization, like they've added more ways to get free skins. Like they just added loot boxes back in. So they're slowly like trying to win back the trust of their old players. So, do you have any thoughts on these recent changes, Talon, to Overwatch 2?
I think that they definitely have a new reason to put out a lot more content. You know, obviously with Marvel Rivals coming out, what was that? Almost half a year ago now. Oh my goodness. It kind of lit a fire under Blizzard's ass to like get more content out. They have serious competition. I think Marvel Rivals has been good for Overwatch in that way, and now they're just trying to pull back all of the old players from Marvel Rivals and even bring in new ones, just especially with Stadium mode. It's been very fun to play.
Yeah, I'm gonna call out Talon for a second here. A couple weeks ago, when Stadium came out, he said, "Oh, we should play together sometime." He never asked me to play a single time when he was on Overwatch.
What? Talon?
I thought we played.
Nope.
Didn't we play
We've
a couple
never played
times?
Stadium together.
Hey, after the episode, you want to play a little Stadia?
Yeah, we can play tonight. I just
My
wanted
bad.
to call you out live. Well, not live, but
No.
Going in the episode now.
Not like this.
sort of a wrap up question for both of you, but we'll start with Peyton. Should there, like, there's been a lot of proposed, people have said there should be legal ramifications for a lot of these exploitative microtransactions. And I know some countries over in Europe, I don't remember off the top of my head where exactly they were, but they have produced laws around, like, especially gotcha games, I think it was mostly. So what are your opinions on that?
I think, especially when loot boxes were more prevalent, there was definitely an argument that developers were introducing young people to gambling at an early age. And I think in the heyday of loot boxes, that was definitely a valid concern. And I think even now, I think the more predatory, um, especially gotchas, or especially I think, in my opinion, one of the most predatory transaction based things that you can find in gaming are definitely can be gambling in a way. I think in a way I haven't fully thought if we should involve the government in such things. Um, I think in the case of loot boxes, like in Hawaii, I think it makes sense mm, to rate these things as gambling and thus put either putting the game behind like an M rating so a kid would have a harder time getting their hand on it because of gambling elements. I think that is a valid thing. I think that is a good thing. And I think countries, governments trying to hold any company in check for predatory business practices, whether it be a video gaming company or a normal company, is inherently a good thing, because if you let a business do whatever they want, they're going to be super predatory and do immoral and illegal things, or not, borderline things that should be illegal in order to get their profits. So I think in a way, my overall point in this is, I think it should be sort of a case by case basis on how predatory these microtransactions really are, and putting a limit on those things. But it shouldn't necessarily be a ruling on all microtransactions in games. I think would be not misaligned, but I don't know. I honestly am going to say I'm not sure what my feelings would be on such a thing, but I think overall it should be taken more by a case by case basis.
Yeah, I guess bouncing off of that a bit, I think one key that you mentioned is it kind of depends on how the things are implemented into the game. Because a lot of monetization techniques, they're not predatory. There are, of course, the bad apples that are predatory with their monetization, but that's not the overwhelming majority.
Well,
I
I would
think
argue that, I mean, the saying is one bad apple ruins the entire batch.
I don't think that the bad apple should represent the entire batch here, though, is what I'm saying. I think there's a lot of great ways that monetization can be implemented without decreasing the player experience, and I think that's what companies need to strive for is a nice balance.
All right, I've got one final question, and then after that, I will open the floor to if you have any concluding statements you want to add. But my last question is: do you think microtransactions are here to stay, or is there a world where the industry moves away from them? Maybe don't think about mobile games for this question because to monetize a mobile game, you have to have microtransactions.
Um, I think I'll go first here. I believe that it's entirely in the hands of um, governmental entities, like you were mentioning earlier, with them passing rulings on microtransactions in gaming. I think if the business was left alone and to the head of businesses, um, that they would make their practices, not all of them, but a lot of them would make their practices more predatory and more intrusive to the gameplay in order to make more profit off of their product. And that would be the future of gaming. But if we see a lot of governmental entities step up against more predatory versions of microtransactions, I think we'd see um, a world where a lot of people start going away from microtransactions and trying to figure out another way to profit off of games. But I think overall, what we'd actually see as of right now, if nothing changed, I think AAA games and expensive games overall would just completely go away from microtransactions, but that cheap games and free games would stay with microtransactions because I think overall what we see is that and what we've heard in this argument is that people are way more willing to tolerate microtransactions in free and cheap games, but when it's intrusive to a 60, 70, or 8, or even going into the future $80 game, nobody tolerates it, and it often results in review bombing and a less people buying the game, and overall just meaning that a company can't make as much profit as they would have without putting those transactions in the game itself. So I think assuming that no governmental overall a lot of governmental agencies or governments in general make a ruling on microtransactions, I think that should be at least where the we see gaming go in the future.
I mean, you can look at Concord, I guess, is the most recent example of this, where what it went offline within a week of launching, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
and
was
like
a
I
week
was
or two.
talking about earlier, Dragon's Dogma 2 or Dogma, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but inherently got review bombed, and a ton of people who did want to buy it once those reviews came out ended up not buying it because it was a $70 game who had microtransactions and tried to make players use those microtransactions. They inherently created gameplay to try and incentivize those microtransactions on a game that people already dished like $70 out for. Um, and that backlash was so immense that I think they're going to learn from that mistake, hopefully.
Yeah. I would agree. I think that microtransactions are here to stay, especially with like free games. Like you said, that's the main way they get their revenue. That entire model would be shot if microtransactions become more regulated. And also, I'm with you on the point that if people are paying like $60 for a game, there probably shouldn't be microtransactions in that.
All right. Any closing
Thumbs up.
statements you want to leave the episode with?
I hope you guys enjoyed our season of the podcast. I'd like to thank everybody who's a consistent viewer of our podcast, who has seen all of our episodes. I think you guys are awesome.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. We enjoy filming these episodes, and we hope you enjoy listening to them as much as we like making them.
We will be back. We just don't know when at the moment.
Yes, but we will be back.
We'll be back better than ever.
Also, I hope you guys felt, because I definitely felt like this was a very constructive argument. So I hope you all feel the same way. Yeah.
And with that, I think that season 0 comes to a close.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you for listening. We hope you will join us back here for season 1, our big project.
Yeah, we are all looking forward to it.
All right. I guess we'll see you later then.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.